Okay, we are officially live. Let me go ahead and start the recording. Actually, we're going to wait a couple minutes until we're ready to start. Holy cow, there's already seven. I looked away and I'm back, and there's 72 people here in the live Zoom. That means we're going to have well over 100 people on tonight's call. It also means that we're going to have maybe potentially thousands of people watching this via the restream. So I'm really excited. We've got a great guest here tonight. Melanie Mooneyham says she's in Madison, Alabama. Hey, Melanie. And Ivy says North Carolina. Lindsay's in Idaho. Ooh, I'm glad that Lindsay made that comment. I've been looking for you, Lindsay. Let me just make you a co-host. And we're about 90 seconds away from starting. If there's somebody you've invited and you don't see them on the call, now's the time to invite them. We're going to start in about 90 seconds. All right, we got 100 people here now, and we are about 60 seconds away from getting started. Thanks, everybody, for being here early. We're going to get started here shortly. And I'm just looking for one last guest, and then we'll be underway. Hey, thanks everybody that has their camera on. You know, it's kind of fun to put names and faces together. And so I appreciate all of you that have your cameras on. I realize not everybody's in a position to turn the camera on, and so no pressure. But for those of you that have your cameras on, that is awesome. And I'm stalling a little bit right now because I don't see our opening guest here yet, unless she's on under a different account name. So I'm just looking for that. But we may have to, the show must go on. And we believe in starting on time and ending on time. And so we're going to get started, and hopefully our guest makes it in. Let me push the record button and we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's call. This is a call all about metabolic health. We hope that you've come to this call with your problems, metabolic health problems. Not that we hope you have problems, of course, but I know many of you are here because you want better metabolic health, better health. Many people that come to these calls are people that are suffering from insulin resistance, suffering from things like prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. For women, things like PCOS. For men, things like erectile dysfunction and all the related problems. There's also many of you who are here trying to improve your gut health. Of course, when we improve our gut health, it helps our skin health, our metabolic health, our respiratory health, our mental health, our overall health, our hormonal health, everything when we improve our gut health. And so for people that are here to learn about that, we are glad that you are here. On tonight's call, we have some really special guests. And one of our guests is actually one of the top experts in the world on insulin resistance. Now, this is not a person who I have bribed or paid to come on this call. This is a person coming onto the call because she's really, really passionate about what she does and what we're doing to change the world together. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being on time. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So to begin the call, I just want to introduce myself. Many of you have not, maybe this is the first time we're ever meeting each other. And many of you have put your name and where you're tuning in from in the chat. And it looks like we have people from literally all over North America today, some in Canada, some in the United States, some in Mexico, and many more around the world that will watch either this call live right now or are watching a recording of this call. This call is live. It is May 8th, Mother's Day coming up this weekend. And to begin the call, let me just introduce myself. My name is Trent. This is a picture of me and my dad. About 7 years ago, my dad died from stage 4 colon cancer. Now, when my dad got sick and they diagnosed him, the cancer had already spread all over his body. It was in his liver, it was in his lungs, it was literally everywhere. And I got desperate. I went down the rabbit hole trying to find out how to potentially save my dying father. My dad was the greatest guy in the world, but had the world's worst diet. Every time he would get into a stressful situation, he would turn to food. He was an emotional eater. It wasn't so much about, well, for my dad, it wasn't so much about the medications he was on, because he was on a number of them. No matter what he did, he would not get healthier. And he got progressively sick until eventually he died. And when my dad got sick, I started to study all the reasons. Why did this happen to my dad? What could have been done? What could I have done potentially had I known what I know now to intervene and help my dad save his life, right? And so when I studied all this stuff, I became very passionate about it. And I've kind of made um, a mission out of my life to spread awareness about metabolic health. I make lots of videos now, educational videos that are online. And what we talk about in these videos is metabolic health. So I will be hosting this call tonight, but we have some real experts on the call that I'm excited to get to. There are some people saying that they do not have sound. I also just realized that I have not started the language interpretation yet. So let me just go ahead and make sure that our Latinos have Spanish translation and set that up. Troy Hatch says that he can hear. Can everybody hear me? All right, I'm getting thumbs up. So if you cannot hear me, then you're not hearing this message, but nevertheless, you need to adjust your audio settings. All right, so those of you who are here, if you could help out somebody in the chat who's not hearing sound, that would be helpful to me. They can't hear me, so they're going to need somebody to type to them. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I normally have a guest on this call at the beginning. She's not here yet. We may go backwards and bring in the guest, but we certainly have the guest of the hour, and that is none other than the famous Lindsay Venn. Lindsay Venn is an expert when it comes to metabolic health. And on this call today, I want to explain exactly how our protocol works, why it works so well at helping people improve and correct a lot of their metabolic health problems. And we're going to make sure that we give you all the information on the protocol here in a moment. We're also going to have a live Q&A where you will be able to talk to one of the top experts in the world, all things metabolic health, and ask questions. All right, so we will have some questions, some time for live Q&A at the end. There's 200 plus people here in the live Zoom. So if you've got a question, we're going to need you to be right on top of it and have your question ready to go. All right. First, I want to talk about insulin resistance and a subject that's kind of a special subject for this week, which is the subject of GLP-1. What is GLP-1? Why is everybody injecting themselves with Ozempic and Mounjaro and Wegovy? What are the side effects of doing that? And is there a way to increase GLP-1 naturally without any side effects, right? So my guest for tonight's call is Lindsay Venn. Lindsay's going to talk all about insulin resistance. She is one of the founding members of the Metabolic Society for Healthcare Practitioners. She is one of the head honchos at Insulin IQ, and Lindsay does a fantastic job of making very complex things simple. Lindsay, take it away.
Awesome. And I think I tried really hard. I think I figured out how to make sure my audio works on this. So we'll go here and share my screen. And thank you again for the wonderful introduction, Trent. You're always too kind. So, but I am always thrilled to educate people on this because this is the way you get healthy. This is the way you fix what you have that's going on. As you'll see here in a minute, I'll show you all the different things that are 100% related to insulin resistance and how they can all be fixed with one thing. So I assume everybody can see this okay. Trent, we got a thumbs up? Yeah. Can you see it all right?
Looks fantastic. We see you and hear you.
Perfect. He did mention, as you can see, I am a founding member of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. If you need a practitioner in your area, go to their website because all of the people who are well-versed in this are listed there and you can certainly find somebody. If not, you can use me through Insulin IQ or Venn Integrative Medicine, as you see here. So first things first, why should you worry about this? Who should worry about this? What are some signs and symptoms that may indicate you have this? So things that we like to talk about. Insulin is a growth hormone. It makes things grow. Skin tags are excessive skin growth. That's an example. We've got this thing called acanthosis nigricans, big fancy word that means increased growth of skin pigmentation. So we get darkening in the folds of the skin on people. belly fat, especially the kind that's underneath, and Trent always hits on this, but the kind that's underneath the abdominal cavity. And so you can't pinch and jiggle this abdominal fat. It is there, but it makes you look, if you're a man, it makes you look pregnant, or if you're a woman, it makes you look pregnant. Fatigue, if you are unexplainably tired, that's a problem. Or if you're always hungry, you eat and an hour or two later, you're starving, you have insulin resistance. So what is it? Well, let's talk about it. So this slide, I always love to show because every cell, this example down here in this, uh-oh, my pen's not working. Oh, well, we'll do it without the pen apparently. Every cell in the body requires insulin in order to get glucose in, and glucose is the number one fuel source when it comes to what the cell wants to use for fuel. There we go. There's the cell. So this is exactly what it looks like. Insulin is almost like a lock inside of a key inside of a lock. So if our cell is a lock and we need to open up the door, then we're going to use insulin over here in this receptor to open this door for glucose to be able to get into the cell. Insulin resistance is exactly what it sounds like. It's the cell being resistant to the effects of insulin, meaning that that part doesn't work, meaning glucose cannot get in. And this is a problem because if there's no other fuel source for the cell thinks it's starving, and that's what triggers those things like fatigue and being hangry and whatnot. So a normal person, if I were to put it on a graph, I always say, you know, they eat something, their glucose goes up, their insulin goes up, and they come down nice and normal. Someone with insulin resistance, the glucose pattern is exactly the same, but the insulin has to do this massive rebound in order to get glucose into the cell. And what often happens then is the glucose will crash. And when the body senses glucose doing this rise and crash thing, it makes you want to eat. And what happens when we eat? We raise glucose and we raise insulin again. And it's this cycle that we can't seem to get out of. The other problem that happens is when we have this level of increase of insulin in the body, we start to store glucose in the form of fat into places we don't want to, places like the liver and places like the muscle, which can cause a lot of problems. The other problem is that we store fat in two different ways, and 95% of us do it in the form of hypertrophy. This means that each tiny fat cell just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is good because we then have a limited number of fat cells and we can only get so big. The problem with it is it's extremely inflammatory, and that's what leads to all of these chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, etc. The other 5% do this thing called hyperplasia, which is the fat cells themselves don't get any bigger, but we can make hundreds and thousands more of these fat cells, leading to these people who are my 600-pound life kind of people. They're metabolically technically healthy, but they're so overweight and obese that obviously they're not healthy. So we want to avoid the inflammation of hypertrophy by lowering insulin. So the studies they've done, this was 2019, they showed that only 12% of Americans are actually metabolically healthy. The other 88% are not. And so the chances of all the 200 plus people that are on this call, 243, Trent, look at that. Chances are is that at least 200 of you have or know someone with insulin resistance because it's so prevalent. The most recent study actually shows that 93% of us are metabolically unhealthy, which is a real big problem. So why does it matter? This is why it matters. If you look at all of these different diseases, they're chronic diseases. They're not what we call communicable diseases. You can't catch these. You don't catch fatty liver. You don't catch diabetes. You don't catch high blood pressure or low testosterone. These are diseases that are caused by one main factor, and that's insulin resistance. This is a real bummer because it leads to so many problems, but it's also a really wonderful thing because there's one strategy that if you have multiple of these, you can fix with that one strategy. So bear with me. We're going to talk about the main ones of these. Type 2 diabetes. This is diagnosed typically by your medical providers with an A1C equal to or greater than 6.5. I don't love this metric because 6.5, as you can see down here on this chart, is a blood sugar of 154. But at 6.4, when you're not diabetic, you're at 151. Well, that measure could be checked 1 minute or the next. And so it's not a great indicator. I don't love it. What I want you to do is to catch your diabetes or pre-diabetes sooner. We want to make sure that you are catching this in the pre-diabetic phase so you can get it better. So we're looking for hyperinsulinemia without hyperglycemia, meaning that means your insulin levels are high because you have insulin resistance, but you don't have high blood sugar yet because it's keeping up as well as we can. So make sure you get a fasting insulin with a goal of less than 6. Don't let your doctor tell you that 15 is normal in the reference range, because it's not. Those are not fasting. We want fasting insulin to be less than 6. If you're already in the diabetes range, we want to make sure that you work on getting that A1C less than 5.5. Hypertension or high blood pressure, this is very much related to insulin resistance for this variety of reasons. This image comes from Ben Bickman's book. And so we're going to talk about the things that cause high blood pressure. The first one is increased volume. When you have a closed system, like a garden hose, that's why that picture is there. When you have a closed system and you increase the amount of volume in that closed system, you're going to increase pressure. Well, we have increased volume because we have increased aldosterone. We have increased aldosterone because we have increased insulin. So getting insulin down will help bringing, excuse me, will help bring down that aldosterone. Pardon me. Too much talking and I get a tickle. Anyway, that helps bring down the aldosterone, which will bring down the volume, which will bring down the pressure. The other thing that happens is we get insulin resistance of the vascular walls. So they become too thick and they become unable to vasodilate, which will also lead to an increase in pressure. Again, closed system. If you have a decreased ability to dilate plus an increased volume, you're going to have increased pressure, both improved by lowering insulin. Pardon me, I'm going to struggle with this for a second.
Hey, take all the time you need. If you need to get a drink, feel free to get a drink.
Pull out my tea and make it better, right? So, perfect. I did get a new big bottle for my tea too, by the way, which I absolutely love because it keeps it cold. Okay, so coronary artery disease. So this is really related to cholesterol and clogging of the arteries, and that's why I have the picture of the pipe in here. We used to be told that eating high fat, high cholesterol, saturated fat was just like pouring hot grease down a cold pipe. Not true. 100% not true. This theory is completely false. What we do know is the inflammation and insulin resistance shown by measuring a triglyceride to HDL ratio actually is a much better predictor of coronary artery disease. What you're going to do, Canada note here times 2.3. But what you're going to do is take your triglyceride, divide it by your HDL, and that's going to give you your triglyceride to HDL ratio. Mine, this is my numbers. I'm at about 1.0. This is the last time I checked it. I look at these numbers all day long in hundreds of people every week. And a very typical triglyceride in a patient is 150. A typical HDL is 50. These are, again, quote unquote, normal. If you measure that ratio, you're at 3.0. For reference range, we want to be really happy, we want to be less than 1. To be okay and kind of happy, we want to be less than 1.5. You're not necessarily insulin resistant with that number. Anything greater than 1.5, you do have insulin resistance and a worry when it comes to coronary artery disease. Alzheimer's or dementia is now known, as you can see here, as type 3 diabetes. And there's a reason for this. This is because the brain becomes insulin resistant and leads to dysfunction of brain function, leading to memory loss, cognition, etc. And so what happens here is the brain is extremely picky. It can only use 2 sources of fuel. The first source is glucose, and the second source is ketones. Just like I showed in the very beginning of this presentation, if your cell is insulin resistant, glucose cannot get in. And why is that a problem? Well, most people are not on a diet that allows for ketones to be formed. We do know that the brain likes ketones and it prefers ketones, but if you're not intermittent fasting, you're following a low carb diet, you don't make ketones. And if your brain is insulin resistant, then you're not able to utilize glucose. So this is certainly a problem. Fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is what this little definition stands for. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now the #1 cause of hospitalization related to liver problems in the United States. This is exceeding alcoholic liver disease. It's exceeding Hep C, different kinds of hepatitis, etc. So it's become a really big problem. We call the storage of fat in places where it's not supposed to be stored, we call it ectopic fat. So if you look at steak, for example, this is ectopic fat in cattle. Really, they're not supposed to store fat in their muscle, but we force feed them grains by feeding them low protein diets, and they now start to store fat in their meat. Foie gras, they start to store fat in their liver. Foie gras is fatty liver of the goose because we feed them too many carbs, increase insulin resistance, increase ability to store fat in places we don't want it to. This map just shows you the prevalence, and I have said this over and over and over again. These are the people who know about it, and diagnosing fatty liver is extremely difficult to do. And by the time you see it on labs, it's really, really bad. So don't use your labs as a gauge of whether you have fatty liver, use your insulin resistance. So fertility, female fertility, PCOS is the #1 cause of female fertility worldwide. If you have some of these symptoms, hair loss, facial hair, abdominal weight gain, infertility, etc., you very likely have insulin resistance. And this is because insulin keeps this thing called aromatase working the way it's supposed to. If aromatase isn't working, women cannot convert testosterone to estrogen. If they don't do that, they don't have appropriate female hormones to ovulate. They therefore develop what we call the string of pearls around the ovaries, and we have problems with anovulation, meaning that they can't ovulate and therefore they have problems with fertility. Get insulin down, aromatase starts to work and fertility gets much better. For men, testosterone is huge. And so we do know there's a very indirect relationship between testosterone and insulin. The higher your insulin, the lower your testosterone, and vice versa. The lower your insulin, the higher your testosterone. I've seen many, many, many men improve testosterone levels by hundreds and hundreds by lowering their insulin. The other issue is that vasodilation thing that we talked about earlier. If you can't vasodilate, you can't have proper erectile function, leading to ED. So now let's talk about this GLP-1 thing that we were talking about a minute ago, because boy, is this a hot topic. I just got done speaking with a pharmacist about this, and I think he's going to start doing Feel Great rather than selling tirzepatide and semaglutide, but we'll see how lucky I was. So GLP-1 is this hormone. It's called an incretin hormone that is actually secreted from the intestinal tissue in the body. And so it does a huge number of things. As you can see here, there are a gazillion things in this slide that GLP-1 will impact. Your stomach, it slows gastric emptying. It helps with your mental capacity when it comes to appetite suppression. It helps reduce the amount of liver fat. It helps change the kind of fatty tissue you have. There's so many benefits to GLP-1. I can't even talk to you about it because it is so beneficial. The one thing I point out here, I did cross this off on the slide up here. They're in vitro studies are ones that are done in a petri dish. In vivo studies are ones that are done in people. And they did find in vitro in the petri dish that insulin secretion was increased. So those of us in the insulin world really were like, oh my gosh, we don't want that. We don't want to increase insulin. But when they did the in vivo studies in actual humans, they did not. They actually showed a decrease in insulin. So that's why that's crossed off of this slide. Actually, no increase in insulin and actually a reduction in insulin with GLP-1. So where's a good place to find GLP-1 benefits? Well, the yerba mate, the chlorogenic acid in una mate actually has been shown to boost GLP-1 by 60 to 70%. My very own friend, Ben Bickman, just did a study on this, and he actually studied this actual product. There's all kinds of studies on chlorogenic acid or whatever out there, but the study itself on una mate that he did was actually 60 to 70%. He didn't publish this yet. And so I believe, yes, this next slide, because it's not published data, I think I got the audio to work this week, is going to talk about the fact that what he found.
Una mate, which is a yerba mate supplement, which my lab, we actually published a paper on that. In fact, some unpublished results that I'll be sharing at a meeting in March in Las Vegas is that this yerba mate supplement called Una Mate also increases GLP-1. We found in this experiment we did, the GLP-1 levels went up by about 70% in a fasted state, which is pretty considerable.
So pretty exciting. We love to have him say that. And he actually did share a slide with me. I can share it next time with actually the data from the research study that he's getting ready to publish. So where does this come from? The yerba mate is this plant. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, but it consists of all of these wonderful things. There's lots of benefits to caffeine and theobromine and all of these other things. Adaptogens is one of the kind of hot topic words that people use, but the one that I want to focus on, thanks to GLP-1, is chlorogenic acid. There's actually a lot of chlorogenic acid in the yerba mate concentrate of una mate, which is huge. Very insulin sensitizing, helping to reverse insulin resistance. To show that it's not all just me and Ben Bickman and insulin IQ, there are lots and lots of studies out there on the benefits of chlorogenic acid when it comes to cholesterol, weight, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure. All those things that you saw in that big circle have all been proven by multiple researchers and multiple labs to benefit chronic disease. So what's the problem with the synthetic ones? What's the problems with Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, all of these things? You can see the list over here. There's all kinds of issues with it. It's a synthetic product, number one, so it's not natural. Number two, we are getting people into these supernatural levels of injections of GLP-1. The body's not used to this. It doesn't know how to handle it. I did talk to Ben the other day and I said, all hormones have a negative feedback loop, meaning the higher the hormone, the less stimulation from the brain and from the rest of the body to actually make your own. So are we technically shutting off our own GLP-1 production when we actually give it exogenously? I really question this. It really makes me wonder in some of the stuff I'm seeing. The other issues is we have lots of gastroparesis. This is to the point where people are having to go on permanent tube feedings, which is just traumatic and tragic and life-changing. Nausea and vomiting, constipation, there is a black box warning for thyroid cancer. And a lot of Ben, what he has talked about is the fact that if you lose 50 pounds on Ozempic and you have to stop it and you regain 40 of it back rapidly, well, 30 to 40% of that weight loss was not fat, but what you regain is 100% fat. And so you're losing muscle, which is sarcopenia, you're losing bone, which is osteoporosis, and now you're becoming super fat, because now you've regained a huge percentage of that body fat back, unintentionally when you have to stop these meds for whatever reason. So kind of sad. I really love to promote the una mate rather than the Ozempic or the different medications that are out there, because you get all the benefits without the side effects and you can do this lifelong without any worry. So if you want to reach me, here's how you do it. I'm happy to help out whenever I can. I'll now turn the time back over to Trent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Hey, that was excellent. Absolutely excellent. And for everybody that's on this call, I mean, about 300 people here on the live Zoom, plus thousands more that will watch this through different restreams and recordings. This is a treat. I mean, this is one of the best in the world, one of the top experts in the world on insulin resistance, talking all about what it is and how to reverse it. And to get that kind of information and insight on GLP-1 is just awesome. So thank you so much, Lindsay. We're going to bring Lindsay back in a moment for the Q&A. As promised, she'll be part of our live Q&A today. Really, really appreciate you. One more thing about Lindsay, Ben. If you don't know where your blood work's at, if you've not done blood work, or if you have some, kind of bad blood work that you'd like to fix, and you want a second opinion, Lindsay would be a great person to go to for that. She can help you get your labs. She can help you interpret your labs. And, I went to a doctor's office once with a stomach ache and was prescribed a medication for a stomach ache, right? Lindsay is somebody that looks at every single option of ways to do this naturally without medication first. And it's just awesome to have. So thanks, Lindsay. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about this protocol and explain it very, very carefully and simply for anybody that's new to it. All right. Now, before I do that, I've got a short interview that I want to do with somebody who has been following the protocol. One of the difficult things about sharing this protocol to a bunch of strangers who have no idea really what this is capable of is you may feel a little bit skeptical. When you hear some of the things you're about to hear, and when you see some of the proof we're about to show you, you might have some thoughts going through your head like, oh my gosh, this sounds almost too good to be true, right? And so I'm going to ask the audience to help me tonight with some proof, so that you'll realize this is not just me talking, right? But first, I really, really want to bring on a guest, and I'm looking for her now. This is somebody who I have actually never met before. This will be my very, very first time interacting with this person. And I'm excited about that. So where is she? Alyssa, are you here? Did we lose Alyssa? Hold on. We lost you. All right. I am not seeing her. So perhaps we move on. Okay, so let me just show some proof quickly, and then I want to ask the audience for some help here. So the protocol that I'm about to show you and explain to you is so truly so simple that many people, when they first see it, are like, wait, there's no way that just making those two quick changes could really change everything about my health and my blood work. I went on this protocol as skeptical as anyone. And in about 5 weeks, I saw my love handles just start to disappear. Actually, for the first 5 weeks, I didn't lose weight. I felt good, but it started to help me trim down. And I started talking about this with people that I know. My friend Cody, we've been friends for 20 years and more than 20 years, I think. And Cody went on the protocol and quickly lost 70 pounds and reversed his insulin resistance, right? Didn't change anything, was not counting calories, was not doing any extreme exercise, was not on an elimination diet. Just a couple simple changes changed everything. I saw Eddie on the call earlier. Eddie, what's up? Eddie is a celebrity on TikTok. He's an actor and a singer. I think maybe a songwriter too. Maybe an actor and a singer. And Eddie is well known on TikTok for walking around Los Angeles with his shirt off. Shirtless Eddie. All right. And a year ago, shirtless Eddie had type 2 diabetes and his A1C was very high and he was on metformin and other drugs. And now Eddie has lost, Eddie, how much is it now? Over 100 pounds and is off metformin and has reversed his type 2 diabetes. And all he has done is the protocol I'm about to show you. I started talking about this and got, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds and hundreds of messages from strangers who I've never met, who told me that just implementing this simple protocol has completely changed their life. And I can scroll and show you literally hundreds of these. Photos of people's blood work before and after, photos of people's A1C dropping, photos of them saying, hey, I'm in my doctor's office parking lot right now. I just got taken off metformin. I don't have type 2 diabetes anymore, right? Claudia was a type 2 diabetic for 2 decades. She had been on metformin for 20 years, right? She looks like a new person, a younger person, and is off all of her medications, right? Despy had an A1C, I think it was like a 14.7 or something like that. She lost 125 pounds and her A1C is now a 4.9. She's not even on the pre-diabetes spectrum anymore. And she looks a decade younger and like a different person, okay? So I wanted to give you some proof because this just seems so simple that you'll be like, really? I mean, is that really possible? So this is what we're doing with this protocol. If this is breakfast, oops, where's my pen? If we've got breakfast and lunch and dinner, what most of us are doing on this protocol is we are skipping a meal each day. And for most people, breakfast is the easiest meal to skip. Now, can you do this? There's some people that do this without fasting. There are some people that we make modifications for. We can do this with any lifestyle. This can be adjusted for anybody. But what most of us are doing is we're skipping a meal each day. Now, when you skip breakfast, you extend your overnight fast. When we extend the overnight fast, we keep our insulin levels low. This helps our body burn fat. This helps our body become more insulin sensitive. We are forcing our body into a nutritional ketosis, and our body and our brain feels fantastic. Now, if you say, well, wait a second, fasting makes me hangry, and this sounds impossible, Well, we used to all feel that way too. And there are ways to make this so much easier. The second thing that we're doing is we're really focusing on, so we're doing some intermittent fasting. And the second thing that we're doing is we're focusing on an increase in the right types, specific types of fiber. When we have fiber in the diet, like Lindsay talked about, it will help us avoid blood sugar spikes, insulin spikes. It will help us with cholesterol and triglycerides and all the blood work numbers that our doctor wants to see improve, right? So what we're doing on this protocol, and it's beautiful because it is completely cost neutral, is when we skip breakfast, when we skip a meal, we are saving $5. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to take the money that we have saved, and we're going to use that money. What am I doing here? We're going to use that money to buy some things that will make this easy. So we're going to take the $5 and use that to buy some things to make this super duper easy. Now, I am somebody that I've struggled with willpower and dietary discipline most of my life. I was on diets in high school, okay? I was the guy that, my friends would eat whatever the heck they wanted. I would be sitting there eating it too. They would be skinny. I would be fat. And every time I would try to, get in better shape, I would go on a restrictive diet. And after, a period of time, my willpower would break and I would fall off the wagon. So what we're doing is we're making it easier so that willpower is, not part of the equation. All right. And it's really, really simple. When we are fasting and trying to avoid snacks or empty calories, we are sipping the Unimate. Lindsay talked about how this increases GLP-1. Lindsay talked about some of the other benefits of chlorogenic acid. It helps normalize blood pressure. It helps us feel very full. We're more efficient at fat burning. It keeps our insulin levels low. But all of that, while it's interesting and good, it really boils down to this for me. When I'm sipping the Unimate, I literally forget about food. Now, you can have it hot, or you can have it cold, or room temperature, whatever suits you. I like to steep it in lots of water, and you can just sip it. It is unbelievable, okay? Now, outside of the Unimate, on the biggest meal we have each day, and you could have one of these, you could have two of them. Some days I'll have 3 Unimate in a day, especially when I'm doing some extended fasting, right? And then before our meals, we are taking a blend of fiber. This is particularly important in front of your largest or heaviest meal each day. This fiber helps fill us up. Fiber is very satiating. Last week, we did some demonstrations where we made some messes and demonstrated the fiber, but it fills us up. It helps control blood sugar spikes and insulin spikes. It helps with all kinds of things. It is a product that's going to change the world. And when you have the Unimate while fasting, balanced with your heaviest meal each day, it is that simple. It is that simple, okay? Now, I see a lot of people with their cameras on. If any of you are on the protocol and sipping Unimate, just cheers me, okay? There you go, Yvette. All right, Tanya. There we go. We got a bunch of cheersers. All right, that was great. I've never done that before, so I'm glad it worked out. All right. Do me a favor, before we go to this Q&A and before we talk a little bit more about this protocol, I'm going to put somebody on the spot in a second. She's a nurse and a diabetes educator who, for the last couple of decades, has been trying to help people get healthy. And in a moment, I want to bring her on to ask her. She has now put thousands of her clients on this protocol, and I want to ask her why she's done that. Little bit impromptu. She may not come off of mute, but I'm going to do my best to coerce her. Before we get to that, help me out. Okay, we've got a lot of people who are not on the protocol yet, and I recognize many of you are. I see you on these calls regularly. So if you would please do me a favor, I want to prove that what we're doing is changing the world and that we can help people who are struggling, people who are scared, people who are discouraged, people who don't know how to fix their insulin resistance and their problems, and who have tried everything they know how to do and nothing has worked. If you have been on this protocol, I don't care if you've been on it for a week or a month or a year, if you would just put a sentence or two in the chat of what this has done for you. Now, I do not want you to exaggerate, okay? No exaggerating. The truth is enough. If you would put a sentence or two, I want to read a few of these over this Zoom call here because there's a live Zoom, and just give the world some proof. Okay. Laura Deer says, "Hey, I've lost 1.2 pounds my first week." Way to go, Laura. Tony Likens, my A1C went from a 10.7 to a 6.3. I'm down 40 pounds and 21 inches, all in just 90 days. Amazing, Tony. Damon Cerruti, lost 60 pounds, reversed prediabetes, more energy, better sleep, off of my heartburn medication. Alan Kashner, this is great. Guys, Alan's story is incredible. Alan says he was able to get off 6 medications, reversed his type 2 diabetes, and lost 72 pounds in the process. His wife reversed her kidney disease, stage 3A, and lost 38 pounds. Wow. Rose, I have so much energy. It's amazing. It works. It's so convenient, and you do not need a blender or nothing. Losing is amazing. Awesome. Monica Rose, down 30 pounds. My insulin resistance has been reversed. My energy and motivation are way up. This has changed my life. William says, I'm down 40 pounds and 3 pant sizes. Renee Peterson, since January, I'm down 48 pounds, down 30 inches, off my blood pressure medications. I have perfect labs. My eye pressure has gone. Inflammation gone, vertigo finally gone. Holy cow, that's awesome. Jim, I've reversed my type 2 diabetes on this system. So has my mother and my mother-in-law. Kelly H. Well, Mike Hatch. Mike says, lost 40 pounds, reversed my insulin resistance, destroyed belly fat, feel amazing. Kelly H. My blood sugar was 258 3 weeks ago. Since starting this program, it is perfect every day. The lowest one was before this meeting at 114. Kelly, so happy for you. The best is yet to come. You just stick with this protocol. Guys, this works better than anything I've ever tried before. If you use it properly and are consistent, it will work for you. I've been doing it for 2 years now. I feel fantastic. My work productivity is through the roof. I have not been counting calories. I have not been doing extreme exercise. I have not been doing an elimination diet. From time to time, I still probably eat a little bit more liberally than I should. Okay. And yet I've been able to maintain my results pretty much effortlessly. It works. In fact, the manufacturer who makes the protocol, and let's be clear, this is not my product. I'm not the manufacturer of this product. There's a big science company that manufactures it, and they give everybody who tries it a 90-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. They've got 5 patents on it. Nobody can copy it. It's going to change the world. But because it's natural and because there are no drugs and no side effects, in fact, look at all the people that are getting off their medications. Do you expect this to make headline news? I did it first. And then it was like, well, that's not the way the world works. If this is really helping people fix their metabolic health and getting them off many of their medications, right? In many cases, look at this chat. You guys are the ones providing this, not me, right? This is something that is probably going to be swept under the rug or laughed at or ridiculed. But here's the best part. You can test it and prove it. You can prove that it works when you do a blood test. When you go to your same doctor that you've been seeing and you go for your follow-up blood work after 90 days on the protocol, you can prove it and you'll see the results and they will be dramatically, measurably better, or you can just get a refund. If you use it properly, it works every time. Okay, there's more of these than I can read. There's 59 additional messages. I'm not going to read all of them, just a few more, and then I want to go to our diabetes educator. Shannon Davis says, my triglycerides went down from 250 to 50, and my HDL went up from 53 to 122. An HDL of 122 is like Wonder Woman. That is incredible. Zoom user says, I've lost 40 pounds since November. No more blood pressure medication or thyroid reds. Sylvia Turner says, I'm no longer pre-diabetic. I've lost 30 pounds in 2 months. John Cox says, this is Carrie. No more fatty liver. I've lost 35 pounds. Guys, there are 58 more of these. People talking about their IBS going away. People talking about thyroid problems like Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, things like that. Lots of people saying that their A1C has gone down dramatically. Belly fat gone. No more cravings. I'm not hungry. I got to read this one. Katie Hoffman says lost 85 pounds, reversed pre-diabetes, and got off metformin after 20 years on metformin. Okay, so now you can see why I told you you're going to hear some of this and see some of this proof. And I hope you're screenshotting these, Denise. I want to read these later, and I don't have time to read them now. But this is incredible. When we started doing these calls, we said we were going to change the world, and there was like 9 of us, okay? Now there's 300 people on this call and thousands more that will see the recording. This works. All right, Trent's got to stop talking. We've got just a few minutes, and then we got to get into our Q&A. Yvette, you are a nurse and a diabetes educator who has been helping people with their health for, I don't know how long now. Why do you like this protocol, and why are you prescribing this or recommending this to all of your clients?
So this is what I used to carry for all my patients, right? I had alcohol wipes, it had, you name it, CGMs, and I had to study this book right here, the diabetes. I'm sure people have seen this, Lindsay. It is the management care of a dietary disease. Well, to use Jason Fung's words, well, that's just illogical, isn't it? If it's dietary, then why do we need a $120 book or a $1,500 class to teach me what Jason Fung or Lindsay Venn or Insulin IQ taught me in 5 minutes? Plagues of Prosperity is where it started. Ben Bickman, we are sick. We are very sick. That was 2017. I've never seen this before. And I don't give a dang if you're on the feel good system or the feel great system. I don't care if you want to feel a little bit good or a little bit bad. I don't care. This is most likely the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Because I just got a text from a person from October to January. I think it was 578 triglycerides to 150. You can't fake that. I don't care how much Lindsay likes me. She's not giving me some good numbers. I mean, we're pretty good friends, but you can't fake blood work. I could edit myself to Pam Anderson, but I get you I mean, it's going to get me nowhere, right? I mean, I can look like Pam Anderson in an hour, but at the same time, we are very sick. Ben Bickman, we're sick. So when you asked me to do this, I was like, what? But literally has changed. My mom is not the same human being, you know, from lipids to weight to hair to energy. God help me, she's coming tomorrow. This is unbelievable what has happened. I get to work with Lindsay and Carly and Rich and Ben Bickman. So this is a good place to be.
Awesome. Awesome, Yvette. Hey, I know we put you on the spot, so thank you. The moral of the story with Yvette is, you know, and Yvette's not really taking enough credit here, but she has now been instrumental in helping fix and reverse the problems of thousands of strangers all over the world with this protocol. So it works. Okay, we're going to get into the Q&A section of tonight's call. And we hope that this Q&A section can be extremely valuable to those of you, especially anybody who's struggling. Like if you started the protocol and you're like, wait, what's going on with everybody? Everybody's getting great results. I haven't lost a pound, or I haven't noticed anything yet. Is there something wrong with me? Am I doing it wrong? Is this not working? We want to answer your questions, and we want to help give you some coaching. Okay. So for this to work well, I want to set some ground rules. All right. Ideally, if you have a question, you'll use the hand raised feature here on Zoom so that you can raise your hand and we can bring you onto the call. And if you have your camera on, that makes it nice and interactive. If you don't have your camera on, that's not mandatory. You can also put a question in the chat. It's unlikely we're going to be able to cover all the questions in the chat. So just putting that out there. If you want to ask a question, we encourage you to raise your hand. Also, we are not your doctor. I am not a doctor. Lindsay is not your doctor, right? And so if there are specific medical questions that require a lot more information, we're not going to give anybody answers that could potentially, you know, be reckless, okay? So we're going to be careful on our answering for people that have special medical conditions. If you want a second opinion, Lindsay's a great person to reach out to, but I just want to set the stage for that. All right, first question. Let me bring Lindsay in. Let me bring our first question in, which is from Heidi Moy. And Lindsay, I got to find you. Just hold your question for 1 second, Heidi. All right, I've got Lindsay here. Go ahead, Heidi.
Hey, Trent. How are you, everybody? I have a friend who does not have a gallbladder, and I was wondering if the system would be beneficial for her.
Lindsay, you're on mute.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So gallbladder issues are actually large fluctuations in fat intake for people who don't have a gallbladder. So as long as they're doing the system consistently and not going from a 20 gram of fat diet to a 100 gram of fat diet day to day, the system actually will help overall, just to get a little bit more consistency with the fat absorption. So consistent fat intake using the system definitely will be helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that was a great question. And I got another question in the chat earlier about that. It was sent to me privately. So I'm going to do a quick answer of the question that was sent to me. Many people that are on the protocol are hoping that their blood work improves in terms of their LDL cholesterol coming down. They want their HDL cholesterol to go up. They want their LDL cholesterol to go down. All right, that's wonderful. We want to help you accomplish that. Let me give you a quick lesson on how this works and why it works so incredibly well with balance, okay, with this fiber. So our liver creates something called bile, okay? This bile, and this is relevant to the gallbladder question. Bile is something that our liver cranks out. It's stored in the gallbladder. So when we have bile sitting ready to be deployed, it's in the gallbladder. And this bile, its job in our body is to help us digest fat. And after it does its job, the bile gets recycled. It goes back into our system and gets recycled. Okay, it's in a closed loop. But when we eat soluble fiber, okay, when we eat soluble fiber, some of the bile will get stuck to the soluble fiber. And it actually gets stuck to the soluble fiber and it leaves our body with our poop. So we poo it out, right? So because some of that bile is being lost, the body is running short on bile. And so the liver needs more bile. And what does the liver do to make more bile? The liver uses LDL cholesterol, okay, as the raw material to create more bile. And so LDL cholesterol goes down. As we eat more soluble fiber, that fiber gets rid of bile, and the liver will crank out more bile using LDL cholesterol. So the LDL goes down. It is a beautiful thing that our bodies do, but because we're not eating enough fiber, that doesn't happen, and LDL remains very, very elevated, right? Now, some of you are not worried about LDL, and some of you may be worried about LDL, but this product in clinical studies has proven to be absolutely fantastic at lowering LDL cholesterol without lowering HDL. It works fantastically. So, okay, that was the answer to that question. We got some other hands raised. So let's bring in Palani SV. Palani, I'm going to invite you to unmute. Go ahead with your question.
So just a second. I just stepped out of the gym, so slightly sleeping. So yeah. So I have a question for Lindsay. I am going to start this protocol starting, I think, tomorrow. The product gets delivered to my house probably tomorrow. That's when I think it is. So what I'd like to know is my doctor in the US, and you don't have to answer it now, I can schedule a separate appointment need be, does not want to check my insulin levels, and I'm a type 2 like diabetic, and I keep telling him that I want to do this because I've been in this call since March. Now is when I've chosen to take a bite, and my doctor keeps telling me to take metformin, Jardiance, and all those drugs that he does, but I stopped it since March, and I went into Jason Fung's intermittent fasting protocol, and I did lose a lot of weight. One thing not happening still is for a test, if I would eat even the littlest amount of carb, weigh it to 50 grams of some beans, and I eat it, the blood sugar will shoot up from 100 to around 150, just that 50 grams of cooked beans, like not even raw steamed rice. So I'm thinking I still have insulin resistance. That is part of the thing that I'm like thinking. And how do I solve for it? Because I can keep my blood sugar when I'm awake below 110, 120 without issues. Used to be around like 200. But the biggest problem I'm having is I think the doctors are not addressing the actual issue. And that is part of the reason why I want to check if I could speak to the doctors on this call personally and then see if I could do a test of like things that are required for me than like trying to just check my blood glucose daily and then do nothing about
You definitely should come find me at either insuliniq.com or venintegrativemedicine.com. There are so many things going on, but get in it. You can go to ownyourlab.com and order your own labs. They're extremely cheap. You don't have to have a doctor's order. Get whatever you want, and definitely get an insulin, a C-peptide, an A1C, and a fructosamine. I'm sure you already have a lipid panel, but get those and then schedule an appointment with me.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Palani. Great question. All right, next question is Monica Rose. Go ahead, Monica.
Hi there. So my dad's been using this protocol for about 3 or 4 months, and his arthritis is gone. But I have someone else who's wanting to know how that works, and I just don't know how to explain it. I know it reduces inflammation, but if you guys could maybe explain to a couple of people listening how it gets rid of or helps with arthritis, that'd be helpful.
It's Lindsay night tonight. Absolutely. So there's several things that actually help lower inflammation that we do with our diet. Number one thing is to reduce refined processed carbohydrates or reduce the impact of those. And that's where balance comes in. Number two, ketones in the body are the most powerful anti-inflammatory thing that we can do and create. And intermittent fasting is the number one way to create that for two reasons. With unicity, number one, we're fasting, so we have to create ketones. Number two, because of the unamate, we have increased what's called lipolysis, which is increased ketogenesis, which helps also lower inflammation. So those two things together, huge. And that's the number. I hate to say it, we always focus on weight, but we see far more benefit in symptoms like pain and arthritis and whatever and mental health than we do in actually weight, which to me is a bigger win. So thank you.
Thanks, Monica. All right, thanks, Lindsay. All right, we got 3 more questions in the chat. I'm hoping we can get to all 3. Those I'll bring on Kim Alchin first. And Kim, if you could just keep your question concise, and we'll try to get 2 more in after you. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, the balance. When I take balance, I end up getting constipated. So I had stopped taking it, but my cholesterol was higher. It has come down. It's the LDL still needs to come down and the HDL needs to go up, but my overall cholesterol came down tremendously.
Good. All right, Lindsay, this one's easy enough for me, I think. So Kim, biggest thing is, I want you to be consistent. The more consistent we are, the better. But it's difficult to be consistent when it's making you constipated. Now, balance is a blend of primarily different types of soluble fiber. Now, soluble fiber is the fiber that soaks up water. And if you're dehydrated, too much soluble fiber, too little water means constipation. So drink lots of water, not with your balance necessarily, but throughout the day. Stay very well hydrated. Also, there's going to be a little bit of a warm-up period. If your body's not used to much soluble fiber, then you may need to start with half a packet. Instead of having a full packet before your heaviest meal each day, maybe take a half packet before lunch and the other half before dinner until you get used to it and the constipation goes away. Constipation is pretty rare. It's almost always an indication of dehydration. So drink lots of water. And one thing I'll just put out there for everybody that's listening to this, when you're doing anything new, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period. And if you just see yourself through that period, you're going to have fantastic results with this. Don't give up because the first day you feel a little bit uncomfortable fasting, right? Power through that. And that's where, get through that. The best is yet to come. Great question, Kim. Thanks for being on the call. Zoom user, I don't know your name. I see Zoom user. We're going to bring you on, Zoom user. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Jamie, from New York. And my question was just, how do you use the system for females around their menstrual cycle?
You want to do that, Lindsay, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Trent.
Okay, so fasting is different for women than it is for men. There's a great book by Mindy Pels, which I highly recommend you read, or you can look her up on YouTube. She's great. It's called Fast Like a Girl. Okay, and there is, there's a time to fast and to really push yourself on fasting with your cycle, and then there's a time to hold off and not fast. You can still maybe do some light fasting in between meals where you're not snacking between meals, but you wouldn't want to do any extended fasting, right? And there's a fasting calendar. If you'll actually reach out, you know what? I'm going to put this in the chat. If you'll reach out to her handle on Instagram and TikTok is at Sweet Fiber. She has a really good image she'll send you of how to fast with your cycle, and it will explain everything better than I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in from New York. I know it's late there. All right. We've got time for one more question. We got 1 minute left, one question left. Mary Levine has her hand raised. Go ahead, Mary. Mary, if you're there.
No, that was a mistake. Sorry. Next.
Okay, you're good. All right. Well,
Hey, can I pipe up, Trent, real quick?
Please.
I want to do a tiny little shout out to Rose, who's on this call. She is a patient of mine who started Feel Great a week ago. And her testimonial today to me in private was she feels amazing. Her energy is fantastic. She lost 9 pounds in a week. She loves fasting. Anyway, she has said, my goal right now is to be one of those testimonials at the beginning of your Unicity Science call. So I told her that will happen.
Let's do it. Yeah, I would love to have you, Rose. Congratulations. Okay. One last thing, since Mary it was a false alarm on her question. Lindsay, people are asking, what about thyroid problems? Hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, Hashimoto's. How would this protocol influence that?
The easiest answer for this, there's way too many confounding factors that could be unique to you. But the number one thing that people need to think about is, again, insulin is required at every single cell of the body. If your cell is resistant to insulin, it doesn't function right. If your thyroid is insulin resistant, you will have problems. So if you can improve insulin sensitivity of all the other cells, including the thyroid cells, it will function better. And I have seen women improve and or nearly reverse their hypothyroidism, autoimmune Hashimoto's by following an insulin lowering diet and protocol.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we've had several guests on these calls talk about their thyroid problems and how they've had great relief with this. Now, we never want to guarantee people that something will happen that we don't have control over. But the nice thing about this protocol for everybody watching is if you use it properly and are consistent, it will work for you. And if for whatever reason you're not satisfied, just get a refund, right? Send it back. They're 90-day risk-free. It works fantastically. In fact, you can actually order blood tests now with your system and do a before and after A1C test if you'd like. We need to close the call. Lindsay, Ben, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you, nurse diabetes educator Yvette Oxford. Great to have you on the call as well. Guys, if you or a loved one is struggling with your metabolic health, if you're frustrated, if you're discouraged, if you've tried everything and nothing is working for you, invite that person and come to our next call next Wednesday. We do these every single Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. This is something that we're doing to change the world, and we need your help.